Hey everyone, this is Becky Howie from NatureWiseCounseling.com, and I help people who are feeling stressed, tired, and burned out find their way back out of that hole to feeling happy, healthy, and fulfilled again. And what I'd like to talk to you today about is your inner critic. You know the one, the little one that sits right here on your shoulder, and instead of shouting, or instead of, whispering sweet nothings into your ears, shouts all kinds of nasty, terrible stuff that you may or may not catch right off the bat. But I'd be willing to bet that if you started to pay attention, you would notice what a lot of people often notice when they start to kind of watch the inner workings of their mind, and that is that we are a lot crueler to ourselves than we typically are to other people. And so what I want to talk to you about today is some tips for what to do when you start to notice that that inner critic is being particularly brutal. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a project at work that your boss has asked you to work on, to come up with a couple of designs for, a website that you're designing or whatever it might be. And you pull together a couple of ideas and you present them in a meeting, and the stakeholders don't like any of them. For whatever reason, they just don't go over. And you kind of skulk back to your desk and you sit there and you start to get down on yourself, right? You tell yourself that they were stupid designs, that you're a bad designer, that that you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have taken this job to begin with, that your boss is going to be disappointed, that you're going to get fired, whatever it is, right? This little gremlin over here is going to shout all kinds of terrible stories at you. And believe me, that's all that they are, is just stories. Most of them probably aren't even close to true, but in some strange way, our critic is trying to protect us, right? Trying to prepare us for what someone else might say so that we already know what it is, or trying to maybe in some way motivate us, right? To try harder the next time. The only problem with this is that sit there for a moment and I want you to write down all of those different stories that your inner critic, tells you. And when you read them back to yourself, tell me, do you feel motivated? Because I'm guessing that you probably don't, right? You probably feel very demotivated, rather defeated, and just kind of all around pretty crappy, right? And so what I want you to do after you've written down all of these stories is ask yourself a couple of things, right? First, would you ever say any of these things to a dear friend or a loved one? My guess is probably not, right? So why are you saying them to yourself? Okay, we need to learn to be as good a friend to ourselves as we are to anyone else. Secondly, what you can try is find a picture of your younger self and take a look at that picture. Would you ever say any of these things to that younger version of yourself? Again, my guess is probably not. So why are you saying them to this older version of yourself? Okay? Now, what this does, all these stories that our inner critic tells us, is they kind of beat us down and we just don't feel like we can do anything. We start to feel not good enough. We feel all kinds of things, okay? And what that does is it adds a whole bunch of extra water to our sink that doesn't need to be there. Last week I talked about throwing darts at ourselves. This is a similar version to that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with this emotional sink and darts and all of that, check out the link in the comments below and download my free guide, because I talk a lot in there about how to maintain balance in your emotional sink so that the water level doesn't rise and get to a point where it overflows, right? And this is one of those simple tricks that you can use to remove a whole bunch of water that doesn't need to be there, right? We can't control external circumstances so much, but we can control the stories that our inner critic tells ourselves. So check out the free guide in the comments below for all those tips and tricks on how to keep the balance of water in your sink so that it doesn't overflow.